it's what I bring to work every day, you know? This is a calling, a vocation for me. So there's a lot of love that goes into it, you know? This is a job where you are working long hours, and if you don't love it, you're gonna burn out.
What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. This podcast is sponsored by Berman Falk Hospitality Group, a design-driven furniture manufacturer who specializes in custom case goods and seating for hotel guest rooms. Today's guest is an interior designer, hospitality design specialist who specializes in creating concept-driven spaces. She's currently working on the Beverly Hills Hotel down in Los Angeles, and she recently completed the Huntington Hotel in San Francisco, which was just published in Architectural Digest this month. She's a senior interior designer at Ken Fulk Inc. Ladies and gentlemen, Alexa Dargense. Welcome, Alexa.
Hi, Dan. Thank you.
It is so lovely to have you here. And one of the things I'd like to share with my readers, well, listeners and readers and watchers, is
We're a man of many
skills. Yes. What is it? A jack of all trades, but a master of none. Well, I think I'm a master of something. But speaking of mastery, which is where I wanted to go with this, is in all of these fast schedules that we all work on and all these projects that we work on, it's very rare that I get to be there at a very, very early stage of a project. So much so that, like you, in the case of the Huntington Hotel, I just had such a lovely experience with you sitting at your desk, watching you draw concepts out for side tables and nice and just little details. And I feel like I used to be able to do that a lot more earlier in my career, maybe when people had time or I had more time, or that I would get engaged in a project early. But it was just so, I just love watching people who are masters at what they do their thing. And it was so, I don't know, pleasing for me to just see you there sketching these things out and me taking notes. And it was almost like mesmerizing in a way to just see you create. So I want to start on that foot with everyone, that you really gave me a gift in letting me experience that. And then now it's published in Architectural Digest. I don't know how long, when that first meeting was, it must have been a year and a half, 2 years ago. So it's amazing. And thank you.
Well, there's a lot to say there. For some context, the reason we were doing that was because we were short on time. I think it was that we didn't have time for the level of shop drawing, which normally we would have created. So I was sketching with you so you could take a video and show it to Berman Falk, and then they could just go. So it's funny that we were taking that time because we were short on time.
I miss that. I really, really miss that. But in a way, I think it's a great transition into like the main question of this podcast, because I just felt completely at peace and welcome there. And so with that, I'll ask you, what does hospitality mean to you? Why do you love hospitality?
Oh gosh. So hospitality, I think, is the way that you phrase an interaction. So if you define someone as a guest and receive that guest, you are engaging in hospitality. And so it's how you frame an interaction, and you could call a lot of things hospitality if you think of it as receiving a guest. And I think the best hospitality is going to achieve a level of mastery and excellence, whatever the context might be. So if you're a cabin in the woods receiving a hiker, the quality of excellence is going to be how cold is that water that you're giving them in a cup to drink, you know? And so it's a broad and roomy place. And I love it because it's a place for everybody. My early vacations, I think my family was unusual in that our vacations were two hotels. It wasn't we're going backpacking. It was we're going to this hotel and that's the vacation. There was a place, I don't even know if it's there, down in Cornell, and we would go and stay, and they had a kitchen and a pool and chickens. And the chickens were like a big part of it. And as a child, but that was the vacation. We went to Carmel to this hotel, and it was an escape, and it was where we made memories and where we played and bonded. And so for me, all my life, hotels, hospitality experiences are where the good things happen. And I think that's why I was always drawn to it, because why wouldn't you be? Why wouldn't you want to be where the good things happen?
Yeah. When you would go down to Carmel, you grew up in San Francisco or in the Bay Area?
Marin County. Uh-huh. Yeah, Bay Area.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's cool. Because then you finished high school, you went to Cornell, correct?
Yes.
And then came back home to the Bay Area
Yes.
and worked for one of my favorite people who's no longer with us, but Eric Engstrom. And was that your first experience of working on hospitality projects not in like a studio setting like at school, but was that your first experience there?
Yes, it was. I had a residential background up until then, and a mix of other things like we all do. But um, florist briefly, notably. But you know, being a Marin girl, I think I've always been this way. I just look up like Marin plus hospitality. Just like I look when I was looking for colleges, I looked up, Ivy League plus interior design. I mean, you could make your life choices that way. But and so EDG popped up, and I was just amazed that one of the best hospitality design interiors companies was in Marin. And so the goal became to work there. And unfortunately I joined right as Eric had just passed.
But I'm sure much is sure and like passion were imbued in the entire team at EDG there as well.
And you know what I noticed is like his rock and roll ethos. He he was a cool guy, and that coolness was in the DNA of that company. Yeah.
Mm. So on the rock and roll ethos, also being in the Bay Area, and I know we were speaking about Chip Connolly over previous conversations, but some of my fondest memories of my time in San Francisco were the Hotel Phoenix, which was, I think, designed. I feel like Chip would come up with the concept of, he'd say a magazine and let's have 3 words, and then that's the story we're going to tell, right? And the Hotel Phoenix was Rolling Stone. And I feel like it totally caught that because I went to some crazy parties there with DJs up on the balcony or bands up on the balcony and just the whole courtyard just thriving. But it was it was amazing to be so literal in a story. So as your careers progressed, how have you taken I'm just really curious how you determine what that narrative is and how do you tell your story around that narrative and build that to where, and even using the Huntington Hotel up on Nob Hill as an example where it's such a good story. It's so well executed. It was done under such a crazy timeline. And now it's published in Architectural Digest.
Yeah, it's funny. I learned that Chip did that on your podcast. And I have always, because of, I guess, good companies with strong storytelling, we've always uh, looked for that story right at the beginning. Um, we've called it the DNA, the pillars, um, but just a raison d'etre in a process that could otherwise be very arbitrary, right? Coming back to your reason and your why will keep you, um, give you a North Star. But so I've always done that throughout my career. I've been taught and now do it. And then coming to work for Ken Fulk, he is the master at it. He calls it the movie in his mind. And so for him, he thinks in this cinematic, experiential way, and it's just a gift and a pleasure to watch him talk about his vision. Um, he did it for the Huntington when we started, and we continue to go back to that, but he is a man who loves San Francisco, and that building is 100 years old on the top of Nob Hill where, the old robber baron mansions were, where the earthquakes brought down the buildings. And so there's just so much San Francisco history there. And he saw it as this sort of house on the hill, a residential experience, a cinematic one. And I think you feel that when you walk through the door. But yeah, so I work now with a man that's the master of it. But you need it. Because in a process that can take years and years, and when you're choosing the color of a light switch, if you don't have a why, it's gonna start to feel meaningless, in this day to day.
Shortly after I met you, I don't remember exactly when it was. It might have been over Thanksgiving, or I think it was either fall or winter. I think it was fall. I found myself in West Hollywood across from the PDC, I think on Santa Monica Boulevard. And a neighbor of mine in Fire Island, Alex, she had helped bring the movie that was in Ken's mind to life in the retail experience, which was such like an immersive story to be told. And it isn't it and also just visiting you in your office and just walking through just off Folsom Street and going into the office and walking upstairs. I just feel like that idea of story and this cinematic like wow experience ties through everything. But also all those experiences, whether it's Huntington, the retail location down in West Hollywood, your office, they're also very different as well.
They are, I think people think of a style when they think of Ken, but just as there are many movies, there are many styles and many places to take it. And by the way, that West Hollywood location is changing, so stay tuned. But
Oh, great. Is he going to stay in West Hollywood?
oh God, I don't know the actual address of it. Yeah, ask Alex. Or I don't know if I can fully say yet, but yeah, there's always a sense of a reason and context and history. And so, um, the Huntington Hotel looks very different from the Beverly Hills Hotel is going to look.
Earlier, when you were defining what hospitality meant to you, it's like it's that idea of defining who a guest is or nominating someone as a guest and receiving them as a guest. As you're coming up with your story and getting that movie in the mind out into that narrative, how do you place that guest walking through that movie or that experience? How do you kind of open your mind and heart to what that guest is experiencing? And when does it, when is there a switch or a moment as you're concepting it, like when you were drawing in front of me, um, where you're putting the guest into that experience, into that crucible?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just baked in. We consider the details from the beginning. We're starting to think about uniform, um, tabletop, um, eventually like the the candles, all of these things. So it's very easy to start to picture who that guest is from the beginning. And there's imagery that we present. And of course, we're working with ownership, whoever ownership is, and they're telling us as well. And then, drawing on my own experience as a lover of hospitality, I certainly know what I like and what I'm interested in.
Yeah. Um, I also think there's an interesting bifurcation between the hospitality experience between the retail and the hotel experience. There is a hospitality experience between the two, but there is a difference between a guest and a consumer. And I know that you're more focusing on the guest experience, but in your company, do you talk about, like, for the products and everything else that's going through retail, do you talk about the difference between a consumer and a guest? Do you think about that?
I can't really speak to that. That's something that's not fully part of what I do on the day to day. But my feeling is it would be uh, that the term consumer would never be one that was used in our office.
Right. Okay. Because it seems to me that that's way more transactional and it's not tapping into eh, that emotional experience, that switch that turns on when you receive someone as a guest.
Yeah, yeah, and but I will say there's an element of hospitality in everything we do, and from be it residential or retail or an event that we're producing, or for our residential clients, we have what we call a reveal when we complete a project, and it's a party basically.
For the owner of the home or apartment.
Yeah, it's a really special thing, and we're creating an experience for them, just the way that a restaurateur would be doing so for diners. And so, and again, for a residential client, we would be designing the candles, a logo for their home. We've done the like in-flight video for a private jet. We're considering the experience of living, basically. There would be a hospitality or residential product.
When you think about the grandeur of the Huntington Hotel or the work you're doing at the Beverly Hills Hotel, history supplies so much information into that story, into that narrative that you're trying to tell. And I think that the Huntington was closed for a very long time, wasn't it? It was like,
Right. From the beginning of COVID.
oh, so it was just closed. So there's an opportunity for some real reinvention, but also, I don't know, honoring the history of the place. Right. So I feel like you had a bit more of a clean slate to come up with your story there. Whereas at the Beverly Hills Hotel, there's a certain level of expectation and history and just wow factor of it being the Beverly Hills Hotel. How do you, what was the difference in how you addressed starting off at developing the story in both of those projects?
Well, so at the Beverly Hills Hotel, it's funny, it's about the same age as the Huntington. There is this beloved, in the way that Huntington is beloved, by the residents of Nob Hill especially, but Beverly Hills Hotel is beloved. The polo lounge, the coffee bar, just all these things that we would never touch. And so Ken has envisioned a new addition to this hotel, which hopefully will live peacefully alongside the beloved parts and be there for the next 100 years. And the task was to not imitate what already is there, which frankly has been repeated by many others in different ways already. So, what new addition would be beloved to this hotel? And of course, working very closely with ownership and listening, and there's people there every day. That hotel is operational throughout this renovation. So, listening, people are telling us.
So I work on so many projects, and there's, especially with the ones where where brand and those pillars are heavily considered in telling that story. And I think over the past 10 years, there's been a greater emphasis on that, which I appreciate because it makes everything so much easier when trying to like get through approvals or figure out a nuance on anything. When those when that lens is very clearly established, I find the cascading effect just makes for a much easier project. That being said, I don't think I've ever heard the word beloved come up in any of those projects before. And maybe it has been there, but that's a really strong word. How did you arrive at beloved? Like, what does that mean to you?
It's what I bring to work every day, you know? This is a calling, a vocation for me. So there's a lot of love that goes into it, you know? This is a job where you are working long hours, and if you don't love it, you're gonna burn out. And so, yeah, I bring that love, and I think you find your people, like love finds love, right? So, um, I've been lucky enough to uh, link up with these great projects.
And for these amazing projects that you're working on, how do you think it's changed your delivery of hospitality through the built environment from those early beloved memories? I'm stealing your word from you of the chickens down in Carmel, right? Because that was part of your experience and it's a beloved memory there. But how it's a much different experience, but I guess at the heart level, it's the same, but you're working with just a lot more history. So how do you take that early impressionable memory from yourself and walk it into these larger projects?
Well, I'm not sure if this is exactly answering your question, but I think the thing that makes any project or experience good is not that different at the end of the day. You know, it's sensory, it's a feeling of comfort, of service, um, ease, surprise, delight. You know, the surprise and delight the chickens, you know, is just as valid as the surprise and delight of like an excellent turn down service. Uh, and I will say, you know, there's been experiences in between. So I think the first time I ever walked into a boutique hotel was one. It was the Clift in in downtown San Francisco, in its heyday, right?
When it was the Four Seasons.
Well, the Sleep Park, Reno.
Oh my gosh, you have to listen. It just came out today, but I just interviewed Larry Traxler, who worked on that for Edition and worked with Philippe Stark and just brought that all to life for Ian Traeger.
I will. You know, I nerd out over this stuff. To me, I am a nerd about this stuff. But as like a little girl who I guess weirdly had become very into hotels, to walk into and who had been basically at Embassy Suites up until then, to walk in, no shade to Embassy Suites, but by the way, but love an Embassy Suites, uh, especially as a little girl. But to walk into a place where the lights were super dim and the music was loud and there was this smell right as you walk off the street, and there was a chair that was, you know, there. I don't know if you remember or have been.
Oh yeah, you walk in there, the huge chair, and then the portraits of the people who were like just very like on TVs or whatever. It was like when flat screens were kind of new-ish, and they just kind of were there. It was a magical, magical place. But I think I don't want to take your story away from you, but what I appreciate so much about that project is, and this actually ties all back into the history that we're talking about. I think in that Redwood room in particular, they brought in some really incredible new takes on what that was, but left a lot of that paneling up. And right around the same time, if you just go around the corner to the Westin St. Francis, there was this place called the Compass Rose, I believe, and they had these giant, I don't know if they were probably ionic columns, but they were redwood, the same type of red veneer. I don't know if they were solid. They must have been solid because they were scalped, but these giant red columns in the lobby of just wood and stone and everything. But at some point they renovated that lobby and they just painted over those beautiful the redwood columns. And to me, it was like a very stark difference in how to treat history. But anyway, carry on from there.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, part of the wonderful part of the Clift back then was this Philippe Stark interior, and then you walk into the redwood room. And so there's that contrast. It's like when you go to Hotel Cost, and there's the Jacques Garcia side and the Christian Lieg side. I mean, it's very potent. But as like a, I think I was a teenager, I didn't realize that hotels could be that. And so um that was like my awakening, probably. And I met Philippe Stark a couple years back, and I got to tell him that, and he, in French, by the way. And and so from then on, I think that's why I already sort of knew about interior design. I had an aunt who's an interior designer, so I was sort of putting it together that way.
Mm. So you've already had a couple of bucket list projects under your belt, and you're still in the middle of the Beverly Hills Hotel. If you were to think about the future and other dream bucket list type projects, and you're already kind of 2 for 2 there, what's out there for you? Because you're batting very well.
I mean, the projects that come through Ken Fulk are to the company are the best you could ever hope for. So who knows? Like, it could be tomorrow. Um, but I mean, personally, the things that interest me in my personal life are um this sort of retreat based model of hospitality. And I would love one day to I don't know if you've heard, but like the Zendo burned down in Tassajara. Like I would love to help redesign the Zendo. So, something like that, like um tragedy, by the way, but such is life. It's very zen, actually. But sacred architecture, the architecture of these sort of places of reflection, to me is very, very compelling. Um and so I would love to do something in that world at one point, and I'm sure I will.
When we first started, and I shared that just really magical moment for me, just watching you sketch out some of these details. I think you mentioned that it was you were actually we were taking that it's actually really interesting. We were taking that slow moment together of slowing down because we were short on time, right? That schedule was always so intense, right? So what do you learn from slowing down, and how do you take that idea of slowing down to get the best possible outcome for any project or anything that you're doing?
Well, there was another element there at play, which is that we were together. And so I could have been doing the sketches on my own, but I was doing them with you. And we took the time to do that. And it was 100 times more effective than me emailing you about my sketches. And so there's something there. And and it was memorable. There's something beautiful about the process if you're doing it right. These napkin sketches and things are so compelling because they represent the essence of something. And so, yeah, the process can be really beautiful if done right, I think, are the lessons there. I'll never forget. I think one of the most, I think about this all the time, and it has nothing to do with anything, but um, I, contractors, when they're doing the work, the best contractors, in my experience, keep a really clean job site. And even the guts that you never see are beautiful sometimes. I'm thinking of like the underside of a house in Healdsburg that I was seeing built by Salamandro was pristine. It was like the most beautiful basement you'll never see again. But anyways, someone showed me a photo of the contractors had placed a jar with one flower in the framing, like in between some studs. They had made it a little shrine just for that moment, just for that day of construction, and then it was gonna get taken away and be covered up by drywall. But I just think about that a lot. I don't know what it means, but there's beauty in that because the fact is getting published in AD is 1 month out of the year, and there were 2.5 years before that, right? And so if you don't love it and treat it with this reverence and beauty, like, what are you doing?
I think on that example of the basement in Healdsburg, it's very resonant with me because just last week I was hosting a breakfast in New York during the NYU lodging conference, and an owner from a big developer um, in New York City came over, and I was just listening to that person who's a designer um, talk to other people on the ownership side of things, and they were kind of comparing notes on general contractors in New York City, and they all shared that they love going to job sites and looking at the graffiti on the job sites or how clean it is. And the the projects with the most creative graffiti done in like a really nice way, and also the cleanest ones showed a level of artistry and care that you normally wouldn't see. It's repeated. Those habits are repeated with the best general contractors that they work with in New York City in particular. So again, I think there's something about whoever placed that flower on those studs was taking a moment to create that shrine and create that pause so that, again, slowing down a little bit and appreciating what's around you, I think yields the best results. Which then leads me, I know you mentioned like details and that flower in the basement that no one will ever see. And it was probably drywalled up and you'd probably never see where that was, right? As you think about that, um, as you think about Huntington and all the details that went into that project, and we'll have photos of it and links to it in the show notes. What's a detail that you wish made it into the Architectural Digest spread?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not here to question Architectural Digest.
Well, it could be something that also that perhaps I know you mentioned like a beautiful turn down service. They're not necessarily going to show that, right? I mean, you might see a made bed, but there's all these other elements from the guest perspective that might not make it into Architectural Digest. I haven't seen the spread yet, so I'm speaking a little blindly. I find oftentimes Architectural Digest, especially in the hospitality space, they're just showing the space. They're not necessarily showing the humans that are experiencing the space. I don't know if that's true in this spread.
I mean, I will say I've stood in the lobby of that hotel for many hours, and to watch the residents of Nob Hill and San Francisco walk in, peek their heads because they walked by it for 5+ years now with of it being closed, and to finally see that it's open and that they have their space back, and to say, "Oh, we used to come in here all the time, um, and we were regulars." Just that there is a like, an ownership and a, like, um, communal feeling that is there that you could never capture, but people feel like they have this space back, and then it's, like, a part of San Francisco, which is breathing again. There's a guest book on the coffee table that people have come in and been signing because it's so much I hate to use the word beloved again, but it's
Oh, use it, please. I think we all need to use that word more, because to really assign that word to anything, I think you really also, it comes back to taking a pause and like checking in with your heart and be like, is this beloved? Does it make a, like, beloved is almost a really cool threshold to just make sure that you're slow and in touch with the universe.
yeah, and I think if there's a real reason for a project, then it's because people have they're making memories there, and so Yeah. I remember working on the Flamingo Hotel up in Santa Rosa. I did that with, when I was at PAR. Um, that was with Point Hospitality and Palm House, Hospitality. And, um, people, this just happens with these projects is people who hear about it come and tell you their memories of that place. And they say, sort of, usually if it's a renovation, like, please don't change it. Like, please let us still have this thing. And hopefully you're just making it better. So people would come and tell us about the Easter brunches and the dance classes that they would attend at the Flamingo and ask if that was coming back. And it very much did, and even better, So, I don't know, there's something about the memories that renovations are really special for that reason, first of all. They're so challenging in some ways, um, but usually if a place is being renovated, it's been pretty loved. So and you get, hopefully, the chance to not fuck it up.
Hey, everybody. We've been doing this podcast for over 3 years now. And one of the themes that consistently comes up is sustainability. And I'm just really proud to announce that our sponsor, Berman Falk Hospitality Group, is the first within our hospitality industry to switch to sustainable and recyclable packaging, eliminating the use of styrofoam. Please check out their impact page in the show notes for more info. Yeah. I want to go back to the sketching thing because I'm just trying to think of why that doesn't happen very much for me anymore. And perhaps maybe it's because a lot of people don't draw on paper as much. And maybe I have to kind of wait for the image that's done on a computer to get to me. But you have a skill at drawing, and I think a drawing gets so much more across than a lot like a plotted line drawing from AutoCAD or whatever tool you're using. When you're concepting a project in the beginning, and let's say you're in a room with clients, do you get the opportunity to sketch something in front of a client that helps them perhaps see something that maybe they didn't see earlier?
Oh, sure. I mean, these we have so many meetings nowadays. So, on Zoom you can sketch and yeah, there's a lot of ways to present ideas. We more than ever before. So, um there's so much collaboration during the process and give and take. And yeah, I think, we're just at this place in design where we have endless amount of tools. And so which is the tool that you're used to be the most effective, right? Like, my sketch maybe wasn't the most detailed, but it gave the sense, the feeling. So being discerning in which tools you're using. Um, like, for instance, renderings are just a thing, and they're here to stay. And how are you showing something? You could be showing it in a super photorealistic way, or you could be showing it in a sketchy way, which maybe communicates a feeling better. They have pros and cons, both of them. Um, Everybody wants those photorealistic ones nowadays, but I don't know if they show the soul always. But
In many times, sometimes they do. Sometimes they're striking and they do. But I would say on almost all of them, if you're really honing in on a detail and how that is done, like down low, up high, there's a bit of magic and lack of gravity, like actual gravity of how these things actually function and tie together. And a lot of these renderings miss out on that, I find.
I love how we use concept imagery and sort of look and feel more to sort of paint that real feeling you get versus, I mean, we do both, don't get me wrong, but I think that's just as valid.
I had a note in here from an earlier conversation. I don't remember when exactly, but my wife's name is also Alexa, and she loves puzzling, and you love puzzling.
I do. Wait, hold on. I'm sorry.
No way. What kind is that?
I have a puzzle right here in front of.
Yeah. So she is always doing a puzzle, and it helps quiet her mind and slow down, right? I think this is a theme that's coming up a lot. Um, what do you love about puzzling?
Oh my gosh. Um, well, there's a finished product. There's like a right and a wrong, and you know when you're done. What could be more satisfying?
So is that a similar muscle that you've developed over like your career in design?
I feel when I can't stand when I'm saying, I don't care, or it could be any of these things. When there's a real justification and a reason for a decision, I love that. Um, because it means you've done all the stuff up until then right.
No, it makes total sense. So then okay, so now I have a two-part question. Number one, what's the most difficult actual puzzle that came out of a box that you've ever worked on? Number one. Number two, if you were to look at a project, what was the most difficult puzzle of a project that you've worked on? And again, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and there's a right and a wrong. So what's the hardest actual puzzle that you've worked on? And what was the most satisfying puzzle of a project you worked on? As not so much in the outcome, but as far as like all the different pieces and getting them to work together.
Oh my gosh. I mean, this feels like a invitation for me to brag.
Yes, please.
No, no, not I'm not going to. I think that it was like a round puzzle I did where everything was round, and that made it very hard, and it was all kind of one color or something. So
Wow. So wait, each of the individual pieces were round-ish,
they're sort of rounded, yeah, and then,
and it was all one color.
yeah, it was like oranges. So that was pretty hard. But you develop a system. There's always a system.
Yeah. And the few times that I do puzzles, because there's always puzzles going on, I get into you know what, actually? It's that similar feeling of me watching you like draw, and that kind of peaceful feeling I felt that when I get into a puzzle and that system and you start seeing the matrix and things start organizing and it starts getting done, like that's a magical place.
Mhm. I agree. I agree. That's a best feeling. Yeah. As for projects, I think they all have challenges, but we've gotten through them all. So, like, those sort of like design competitions and things that I've done from time to time in the past where, there's very few restrictions and it's kind of like do what you want. Though those like white box challenges I think are very difficult because it's hard you're not really reacting to anything. Um but I don't know, it's hard to say. I think, we've gotten this far, Dan. So,
Yeah. And if you go on vacation, are you bringing a puzzle with you?
well, or there's a puzzle there.
I'm always leery of ever starting a puzzle somewhere else unless it's in a sealed box because I don't want to I don't want to get through it and have there being missing piece, and I would rather not even start.
Hey, but guess what? Life has some missing pieces, Dan. You gotta be okay with the missing pieces. I've done puzzles I've done puzzles with missing pieces at the end that were new out of the box, just so you know. I don't know how or why it happened, but that's life.
True. I think there's a lot of learning in this conversation that we could take away from this in current events in my life in particular. So you've had this awesome career from Ithaca to Marin to San Francisco. As you look at the projects that you've worked on, the clients that you've worked with, um, the general contractors, the vendors, like all the things that help you finish those puzzles of projects. What's exciting you most as you look to the future?
Well, we haven't really gotten to talk about this yet, but I am just very passionate about being of service, mentorship. bringing up the next generation of designers. We have this vibrant office and so much opportunity to learn from each other. And so, just excited for um, where our office is going, mentoring the younger staff, being of service to them, sort of this. Yeah, I think I've achieved. I'm very happy with where I am, and so now I just want to uh, be of service and just continue to give back because I've been given a lot.
And that actually, that's that, I'm going to pause you there because we all don't just arrive at where we are, right? There's a lot of people that mentor, impact, guide, sometimes even shut doors on us that get us to where we are at the moment. When I bump into Ken and I ask him what's his most favorite thing about Alexa, what would he say?
Oh my gosh, who's Alexa? No, I'm just kidding.
Not my wife, you.
I will not answer. I'm not gonna answer that question, but, I would say it's a pleasure to work with him. He is like the Willy Wonka of the design world. He just his what he has created is so inspiring. He's yeah, if Willy Wonka wore a Tom Brown suit, right? It's a pleasure to learn from him and everybody, like, such talented people across all these different, um, what is the word? You know, we do a lot of different things, at our company, and it's just a real pleasure to get to work with, like, the most talented group of people. And so just coming to work is super fun.
If you don't know what he would say about you, what's one thing since working with him that changed your perspective on things?
Well, I mean, Ken is his superpower is, bringing people together and his sort of charisma, um, and that's pretty inspiring. Don't have to. What he's built is amazing, but he's done it with this group of people and by asking for help and sort of hiring the best and finding the best. So you don't have to do it alone. There's amazing people out there who are excited to work with you and do their best. Um, and it's just such a gift to be able to find the best faux painter, find the best woodworker, and give them a platform to do their art. I mean, it's just a privilege, frankly. And of course, like ownership, giving us the, trust and placing these projects in our hands to then deliver to the public who then get to use it. Like, wow, what a privilege.
So, last question. In I would think one of the things that perhaps that, and I have to look at the Architectural Digest spread now. I didn't actually even realize it was in there until you said that. So shame on me. You mentioned how important when you walked into the Clift Hotel, that the scent was, and I find that scent is one of the more important sensory elements that, from what I've read, and also I can speak from my own experience, it almost provides a timestamp in our memories, right? It's chronological um, memory. Like you can get right back in that Proustian kind of time machine back into your life from that moment. How for the Huntington in particular, were you involved in picking the scent? Like what kind of, I'm just very fascinated by that. How do you tie the built environment into that olfactory space?
Well, we have Ken Fulk candles for sale in the lobby.
Oh, so did you pick one of those, or because some tell this branded scent?
Yes, we're doing a retail pop-up there. So they have our candle candles. But yeah, actually for a home in Montana right now, I am helping to develop the scent um for that home, just like it would be, for a lobby. So, that's what I'm saying is hospitality and residential, they bleed into each other.
And when you're coming up with that scent, like, obviously you have the pillars of what you're trying to convey in this place is the feeling and all of these things. Whoever that scent provider is, or I don't even know what you call it, olfactory designer, brand scent branded scent designer. Do they bring those adjectives to each of those smells to you, or is it just kind of like, how do you narrow down the choice? Because there's so many.
Yeah, I think it's again coming back to the concept. If you do if you have a strong concept, you could give it to any vendor and they'll get it for whatever they're doing, whether it be the scent, the uniform, the menu, the um, furniture. So it just all comes back to the story.
Well, I love the stories that I've experienced that you and your teams have worked on, from the retail and the limited hospitality that I've seen and experienced. I've loved my experience of working with you, and I really appreciate this conversation and all the other conversations that we've had offline. But I appreciate you and I thank you for being here. If people wanted to learn more about you or KFI, and I'll also put a link to the book in the show notes, but what's a good way for them to get in touch?
You can just find me on LinkedIn, Alexa Darjance. My Instagram is pretty unhinged, but you can follow me there. And or just come by. We have our retail stores in the city and in San Francisco and LA, and yeah, let's hang out.
Great. Well, I'm there often, so I will definitely reach out the next time I'm there. And thank you. I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you, Dan. Thank you.
And thank you to all of our listeners and watchers and all the things and readers. I forgot about the readers. If this helped change your perspective on hospitality or hospitality design, or made you curious to experience some of these movies in action, please forward this to someone else who could benefit from it or that might change their mind on it. We look forward to all of these conversations. And without you, the listeners, we wouldn't be here having these wonderful, informative, and I don't know, just conversations that I get to learn so much from. So thank you all, and we'll catch you next time.